The first time Commander Threx of the Varellan Council saw a human eat a habanero, it filed an emergency report to its ship's Central Analysis Core under the classification Biological Hazard, voluntary ingestion of corrosive organic matter. Threx's 4 ocular stalks narrowed as it leaned closer to the observation screen. "This is not food," it muttered, voice low and uncertain. On the other side of the transparent interface stood Colin Arber, a civilian cultural liaison assigned to the interspecies research vessel Xerxes. He was seated casually at the mess table, a plate of vividly red, orange, and green peppers in front of him. The peppers emitted a volatile compound signature that made Threx's olfactory sensors recoil. Colin picked up a bright red 1 habanero, Scoville rating over 300,000, and bit directly into it. No slicing. No neutralizing enzyme bath. Just a straight chomp. Threx's leftmost ocular stalk twitched. "Are you consuming that without protective lining?" Threx asked, stepping into the compartment. Colin waved. "Oh hey, Threx. Yeah, just having a snack." "Want one?" Threx recoiled. "Absolutely not. That substance contains capsaicin in concentrations that would cause dermal blistering on Varellan skin. Your mouth tissues are unshielded." Colin chewed, eyes watering slightly. "Yeah, it burns. That's kind of the point." Threx stared. "You acknowledge it burns you, yet you continue?" "Sure. The spicy kicks in some endorphins. Makes me feel alive." He coughed lightly, reaching for a glass of milk. "Plus, I grew up in New Mexico." "This is tame." Threx activated its internal translator to verify the word endorphin. The definition returned: endogenous morphine-like neuropeptide with analgesic properties. A human pain countermeasure. "You were ingesting a pain-inducing alkaloid to stimulate your internal narcotics system?" Threx asked. "Pretty much." Threx tapped its comm unit. "Field report, section Gamma 7. Human subject demonstrates intentional self-infliction of chemical pain for recreational purposes. Recommend re-evaluation of psychological stability metrics." Colin wiped his mouth. "You know, if you're gonna write me up, at least try the jalapenos. They're mild." "I would rather coat my dermal layer in nitric acid," Threx said. "Suit yourself." The incident was logged and largely ignored until 2 cycles later, when the first joint culinary exchange summit between humans and the Varellan delegation took place aboard the Xerxes. Each species was to present a traditional meal. The humans, not known for restraint, submitted a dish called Nashville hot chicken. Threx reviewed the chemical breakdown: cayenne, ghost pepper extract, paprika, vinegar, and a generous quantity of oil. The capsaicin concentration was high enough to trigger a minor containment protocol in the food lab. "This is a weapon," Threx declared. "No, it's soul food," Colin corrected, setting the tray down. 3 Varellan technicians in sealed suits approached the food cautiously. One inserted a microprobe into the chicken and recoiled instantly. "Thermal spike detected without applied heat source," it reported. "The compound is chemically active." Threx turned to Colin. "You have consumed this?" "Plenty of times." Threx hesitated. "You are aware this violates multiple intergalactic food safety codes?" Colin tilted his head. "Only if you're not from Earth." A short Varellan official named Urlex leaned close to Threx. "Is this an act of biological warfare?" "No," Threx said slowly. "It is. Cultural." Urlex whispered, "The humans are dangerous." Colin shrugged. "We just like spice. It's not that weird. You guys eat fermented algae that smells like diesel. Our digestive tract is adapted to it. So is ours. Well, some of us." The summit meal went ahead, albeit with Varellans confined to a separate chamber with filtered air systems and no permission to taste the human dishes. Several human delegates, including Colin, indulged in the spicy offerings with visible pleasure. Afterward, Threx approached Colin again. "I have reviewed your species' culinary history. You have entire civilizations built around capsaicin-rich foods. India, Thailand, Mexico, Korea, Ethiopia. Your bodies should not tolerate this." Colin grinned. "We're adaptable. You are reckless." "Maybe. But it's not about recklessness. It's about flavor, tradition, and yeah, a little thrill. Threx studied him. Your pain-pleasure thresholds are abnormal. We build tolerance. It's like training. First time I tried ghost pepper, I threw up. Now I can handle it. Threx made a note to submit a revised biological profile on human gastrointestinal resilience. Weeks later, during a routine supply run on the Varellan colony world of Bexler, a small explosion in a cargo hold injured 2 crew members. Colin, who had been inspecting a hydroponics unit nearby, suffered second-degree burns on his left arm and a fractured wrist from being thrown to the floor. He was evacuated to the onboard medical bay. Dr. Kirill, a Varellan medical officer, scanned the injuries. You require surgery to set the bone. Your dermal tissue is compromised. Healing will take weeks. Colin winced. Yeah, that tracks. You are in pain? Yeah, a lot. Dr. Kirill tapped a console. We can administer a nerve block and stabilize the fracture. But you must rest. You will not eat solid food for 2 days. Colin nodded weakly. Understood. Threx visited the medical bay later that day. Your body is damaged, yet you have endured far worse voluntarily through your food choices. Colin chuckled faintly. This hurts way more than a pepper. You acknowledge pain is negative, yet you seek it in your meals. Because that pain is controlled. It's not injury. It's stimulation. Threx paused. I do not comprehend the distinction. Pain from injury is your body telling you something's wrong. Pain from spice is just your body reacting to a chemical. There's no damage. Well, not usually. You are not consistent. Neither is life. Threx filed another report. Subject demonstrates cognitive compartmentalization of pain sources. Suggest further psychological analysis. 2 weeks later, Colin returned to light duty with his arm still in a compression brace. At the mess hall, he sat down with a bowl of chili. Extra hot. Threx, now more curious than alarmed, watched silently as he ate. Colin's face flushed. He sweated, but he smiled. You are still injured, Threx said. Yeah, arm's still stiff, but the mouth works fine. You prioritize oral stimulation while still recovering. I missed this. Threx sat beside him, sliding over a sealed container. We have synthesized a Varellan-safe analog of your chili. No capsaicin. Colin took a sniff. Smells like tomato soup. It is a tribute. We studied your tolerance metrics and created a compound to mimic the flavor profile without the burn. Colin tried it and raised an eyebrow. Not bad. A little flat, but not bad. Threx watched him carefully. We wish to understand, but our biology resists. That's okay. Understanding doesn't mean imitation. It means respecting the difference. Threx sat quietly for a moment. Then you eat the fire. So others don't have to. Colin laughed. Something like that. The next day, a minor fire broke out in the galley after a human technician attempted to deep-fry jalapeno poppers using alien oil. The oil's flash point was lower than expected and the resulting blaze scorched a portion of the ventilation system. Threx responded to the incident, stepping through the haze to find Colin helping douse the last of the flames with a fire suppressant. You are injured again? Threx asked, eyeing his limping gait. Twisted ankle. Not broken. Just sore. Perhaps your species should not be permitted unsupervised cooking. You're not wrong. Threx looked at the charred tray of uneaten jalapeno poppers. Is this worth it? Colin considered. For the taste? For the experience? Yeah. Threx left that incident with a new conclusion in its report. Humans exhibit uniquely high thresholds for risk in pursuit of sensory gratification. Their food culture may pose logistical and safety challenges in integrated environments. However, it is integral to their identity. Back on Earth, the incident made headlines on niche culinary science blogs. Alien Council labels spicy chicken bioweapon. Colin was invited to give a talk at the United Interstellar Cultural Exchange Forum. He opened his presentation with a slide showing a single habanero. This is not just a pepper, he said. It's a symbol of resilience, of curiosity, of the human desire to push boundaries even in our kitchens. Threx sat in the audience. He still didn't understand why anyone would eat something that caused pain. But it was beginning to understand that in some species, danger didn't always mean fear. Sometimes it meant flavor. And the humans? They kept eating the fire. The next incident began with a sneeze. Not a small one either, a full-bodied, head thrown back, tissue-tearing sneeze that echoed down corridor C of Deck 7. Colin barely had time to press the crook of his elbow to his face before the force of it staggered him into the wall. From the other end of the corridor, Threx froze mid-step. Its sensory fronds retracted instinctively, internal chemistry shifting as its immune protocols activated. "Pathogen alert," Threx said aloud, activating its filtration mask. "Human respiratory expulsion detected." "I'm not contagious," Colin said, voice slightly hoarse. "Allergies." Threx remained stationary. "Allergies are an immunological malfunction. You are malfunctioning." "Not a malfunction, a misfire. My immune system thinks harmless stuff is dangerous. It overreacts." Threx narrowed two ocular stalks. "Your immune system initiates full defense protocols against perceived threats that pose no actual harm? Welcome to being human." Threx stepped closer cautiously. "What is the trigger?" "Pollen. From that new Terran plant sample in the hydroponics bay. I was cataloging it and my sinuses went to war." "You are reacting adversely to your own biosphere?" "Not all of it. Just certain parts. Trees, grasses, cats." Threx raised a hand. "You are allergic to felines?" "Some of us are. Not me, luckily." Threx turned and walked. "I must update your medical file. This is statistically improbable." Later that day, in the ship's medbay, Colin lay supine on an adjustable exam platform, head elevated, a cool gel patch pressed under each eye. His nasal passages were inflamed and his eyes had turned a visible shade of pink. Dr. Kirill hovered nearby, observing the swelling. "You administered diphenhydramine?" "Yeah. Took 2 tablets. They're kicking in." Colin blinked slowly. "I might fall asleep though. That compound induces drowsiness in your species?" "Standard side effect. It's an old antihistamine. Not perfect, but it helps." Kirill scanned his vitals. "Your heart rate is elevated. Blood pressure slightly low. Dehydration. I'll drink more water. You require constant chemical intervention to exist in varied environments?" "Pretty much." Kirill looked toward Threx, who had just entered. "This is the 4th physiological irregularity we've documented in this subject." "Irregularity?" Colin asked. "You try living on a planet with mold, dust mites, and seasonal plant emissions." Threx didn't reply. Instead, it turned to a console and brought up the immune system schematics from Colin's medical profile. "Your histamine response is disproportionate. You produce excessive mucus, suffer from dermal eruptions, and require chemical suppressants." "Yup. You should not survive." Colin grinned drowsily. "We do anyway." Threx tapped a few keys. "Despite this, your species thrives in nearly every biome on your planet. With enough meds and gear, yeah." Kirill leaned over. "We once assumed adaptability implied biological harmony. But humans persist through contradiction." Colin reached for his water bottle. "We're not designed to avoid problems. We're designed to keep going while solving them." Threx looked at the screen again. "Your species is inefficient. Erratic, but resilient." Kirill adjusted the lighting. "Your pupils are sluggish. You were sedated. Just a bit. I'll be up and sneezing again in no time." The next morning, Colin returned to the hydroponics bay wearing a standard issue filtration mask and a pair of wraparound goggles. His breathing was audible through the mask's intake valves. He stood in front of the plant in question, an Earth-origin species genetically modified for low-gravity environments. Its flowers had opened fully overnight, releasing a fine yellow powder into the air. "Round 2, Colin muttered, extending a sterile collection vial. Behind the observation glass, Threx and Kirill monitored his vitals. "Why does he return?" Kirill asked. "This exposure harms him." Threx didn't answer immediately. It watched as Colin gently clipped a blossom and sealed it in the vial. "Because he chooses to," Threx said at last. Colin's heart rate spiked briefly, then settled. The mask's internal filter was holding. He completed the sampling and exited the chamber. Back in the hallway, he peeled off the goggles. "Success. No sneeze. You subjected yourself to a known allergen to complete a non-vital task," Threx said. "Science doesn't wait for convenience. You could have assigned another human. I'm the only one certified for cross-ecotype sampling. Plus, I know what to look for in this strain." Kirill approached. "You risked respiratory distress for a flower." Colin shrugged. "It's not just a flower. It's a prototype for lunar agriculture. If it survives here, it can survive anywhere." Threx tapped its datapad. "Your logic matrix is inconsistent with your physical limitations. Welcome to humanity." 3 days later, a Varellan engineering technician named Threx developed a mild dermal reaction after brushing against the same plant. The colony's medical protocols required an immediate quarantine of the hydroponics bay. Colin was called in for consultation. "Your plant has triggered a contact response," said Threx, displaying the faint green discoloration on one forelimb. Colin examined the lab logs. "It's not the plant. It's the fertilizer. Bioactive compound made from earth compost. There's a fungal spore that might have interacted with your skin enzymes." Threx gestured at the sealed bay. "Then why are humans unaffected? We've been exposed to that fungus for millennia. We've built tolerance. Or at least, most of us have." Kirill tilted its head. "You carry dormant organisms that can activate under new conditions?" "Yeah. Most of our microbiome is harmless until it isn't." Threx stared. "You are a walking reservoir of potential hazards." "And potential cures," Colin added. "A lot of our medicines come from the same microbes." It's a two-way street. The next week, the Varellan Council requested a detailed report on human microbial symbiosis. Threx delivered it with a supplemental file titled Human Immunological Paradox: Fragility and Fortitude. The report's final section contained a scanned image of Colin harvesting a sample while visibly congested, with the caption, "Subject continues task despite immunological distress." Counselor Yerlex responded with a single question, "Is this behavior typical?" Threx replied, "It is not atypical." The following cycle, the Xerixis assigned Colin to a new project, evaluating a recently terraformed asteroid habitat containing a hybrid biosphere drawn from 3 planetary sources. The conditions were unstable, the air composition volatile, and the terrain required full-body suits rated for high particulate matter. He accepted without hesitation. Before departure, Threx met him at the docking bay. "You are still undergoing allergy treatment." "Yeah. I'll bring extra antihistamines. There is a high probability of unknown allergens. I'm counting on it." Threx tilted its head. "You do not seek safety. You seek challenge. I don't go looking for suffering. But I'm not scared of it either." Threx paused. "You are an anomaly." Colin sealed his helmet. "We all are. In different ways." Threx watched the shuttle depart. It had catalogued over 200 hours of human biological irregularities, yet each report only raised more questions. The next day, Threx submitted a new research initiative proposal, study proposal, Human Resilience Under Non-Ideal Physiological Conditions. Hypothesis: the human capacity for controlled self-exposure to environmental stressors constitutes a unique adaptive strategy not replicated in any known Varellan subtypes. It attached a note for Counselor Yerlex, recommend reevaluation of human classification. Current designations understate behavioral complexity. Yerlex's reply was brief. Permission granted. Proceed. Threx closed the file and stared at the hydroponics bay through the corridor window. The flower that had triggered the entire episode had since wilted. Yet a new bud had begun to form beside it. Threx watched in silence as the petals slowly unfurled, releasing a faint shimmer of golden dust into the filtered air. By the fourth week into the joint habitat trials on the asteroid station V11, Threx began to suspect the human nervous system was less a biological structure and more an elaborate dare. The station's biosphere, carefully balanced between Terran, Varellan, and Oscary plant systems, was designed to test long-term viability of cross-ecotype life. It was not, by any reasonable metric, intended for recreation, which made Colin's decision to jog laps through the Arboretum baffling. You are exerting yourself in an environment with elevated ozone and low barometric pressure, Threx said, shadowing Colin's route from the walkway above. Colin slowed his pace just enough to respond without panting. Ozone's within tolerable limits, and the pressure's not that low. You are 1.5 kilopascals below sea level equivalent. That is not negligible. Feels like Denver, Colin said, rounding a corner. You are comparing an engineered test zone on a non-rotating asteroid with a terrestrial city. Yeah, I've been to Denver. Had altitude sickness there once. Threw up in an Uber. Threx hesitated. I do not understand that sentence. Never mind. Point is, I'm acclimated. Colin stopped near a patch of low brush with wide, cupped leaves. Sweat clung to his temples, but his breathing remained steady. He bent forward, stretching his legs. I calculated your lactic acid threshold based on your baseline vitals, Threx said, stepping down to the main path. You should have ceased activity 4 minutes ago. Colin straightened. I'm training my anaerobic tolerance. You plateau if you don't push it. You are aware that pushing past the plateau leads to muscle fiber damage. Microscopic tears, yeah. That's how you build strength. You intentionally injure yourself to improve? Not injure. Stimulate. Controlled stress promotes adaptation. That's basic human physiology. Threx turned to the brush. This area contains airborne alkaloids that bind to pulmonary receptors. You are inhaling them at elevated respiration. They smell like eucalyptus. They are not eucalyptus. Colin sniffed again. Still nice. Threx paused. You derive pleasure from exposure to unknown compounds? Only if they smell good. That is not a reliable metric. Neither is avoiding everything unfamiliar. Threx walked a few paces ahead, then stopped. Explain your compulsion toward discomfort. It's not a compulsion. It's a calibration. You find the edge, then back off just enough to grow. Varellans optimize through equilibrium, not extremes. Sure, but our bodies adapt to stress. Give us enough time and the right stressor, and we'll adjust. Threx gestured at the soil beneath the vegetation. This substrate is partially fermented. It contains anaerobic bacteria that could colonize your skin. Colin crouched to examine the roots. I'm not rolling in it. You are within proximity. I've had worse proximity. My cousin once fell into a compost trench in a greenhouse outside Tucson. Took 3 days to get the smell out. Threx tilted its head. Why was your cousin in a compost trench? Bad bet. Long story. Later that day, at 1700 hours station time, Colin reported to the medical bay with mild dermal itching on his right calf. Dr. Kirill activated the decontamination wand and scanned the affected area. You have developed contact dermatitis, Kirill said. Likely from the fermented mulch. Colin lay back on the examination cot. Yeah, I figured. You were advised to avoid that zone. I didn't touch anything. Your sweat likely interacted with a spore matrix. Colin exhaled. It's manageable. Kirill applied a topical steroid gel. Your epidermis is reacting to a protein it cannot metabolize. Your immune system perceives it as an invasive threat. Colin looked at the reddened patch. Weird thing is, this isn't even the worst rash I've had. I am not reassured. Threx entered the mebe holding a data slate. Your immune response is showing elevated IgA markers. Expected, Colin said. It'll taper off. You are treating a hypersensitivity response as routine. I've had poison ivy. This doesn't even itch in comparison. Threx handed the slate to Kirill. We analyzed the mulch. It contains trace quantities of a compound structurally similar to ruschiol. Kirill nodded. That would explain the histamine surge. Colin sat up slowly. Good to know. I'll log it. You intend to return to the Arboretum? Threx asked. Yeah, just not to that section. You exhibit pattern recognition, yet continue exposure to analogous risks. I adjust my parameters. That's how we learn. Threx tapped a claw gently against the cot's frame. Your method lacks margin for error. Colin smiled faintly. That's why we track outcomes. 3 days later, the habitat's air filters began cycling irregularly. The oscary flora had released a dense cloud of seed spores, clogging the intake vents. The environmental controls began to rise above optimal humidity. Varellan personnel initiated containment protocols and sealed off 3 sectors. Colin arrived at the maintenance junction carrying a portable filtration unit. His dermal rash had faded, and he wore a long-sleeved utility suit. We need to clear the vent array, he said, checking the schematic. Otherwise, we'll hit dew point in under an hour. Threx stood beside him, monitoring the readings. You are still recovering from immune irritation. This environment's not going to wait for me to be perfect. You are going to crawl into a conduit with active allergenic particles. I've got a respirator and gloves. I'll manage. Threx stared at him. You are aware of the consequences. Yeah, I'll keep under 10 minutes. Colin disappeared into the access tunnel. From the outside, Threx could hear the occasional clang and hiss of the filtration tools. After 12 minutes, Colin emerged, coughing slightly. You exceeded your limit. Got snagged on a support strut, he said, rubbing his shoulder. But the airflow's stabilized. Threx scanned him. You have minor spore adhesion on your left sleeve. I'll hit Deccan. You entered a constrained, contaminated space while symptomatic, and fixed the system before it failed. That buys us time to recalibrate the bot scrubbers. Kirill arrived moments later, carrying a Deccan wand. Your respiratory rate is elevated. Just exertion. You will report for spirometry testing within the hour. Colin nodded. Fair. As they walked toward the medbay, Threx glanced at the corridor lights, now dimmed to conserve power during filter cycling. You could have delegated. I was closest and trained. You undervalue your own vulnerability. I factor it in. I just don't let it dictate everything. That evening, Colin's spirometry test showed a slight drop in lung function, consistent with mild exposure. Kirill administered a bronchodilator and recommended rest. Threx lingered after the exam. You have lost measurable capacity. For now, Colin said. It'll recover. You accept loss as part of your baseline. Temporary loss. It's part of the cycle. Threx remained quiet for a moment. Varellan doctrine avoids loss. Human doctrine expects it. That's why we prepare redundancies. Your redundancy is yourself. Often, yeah. The next morning, air quality returned to acceptable levels. The Arboretum reopened. Threx found Colin seated on a bench beneath a hybrid canopy of spiraled leaves and pale blue flowers. He wore a new filtration mask, but no goggles. You are here again, monitoring the regrowth patterns. Some of the oscary hybrids are sprouting twice as fast as expected. You are not deterred. Colin looked up. We don't stop because something went wrong. We figure out what made it go wrong and do better next time. You treat adversity as a data point. Exactly. Threx sat beside him. I have submitted my final report. Oh? What's the verdict? You are operationally unsuitable for pristine environments, but ideal for unpredictable ones. Colin laughed. I'll take that. You should not have recovered so quickly. I shouldn't have done a lot of things. But here we are. Threx watched a spore float past, caught in an artificial breeze. I have amended our resilience index criteria. Colin leaned back. That's the real win. The habitat remained stable. No further medical incidents occurred. Colin's lung function returned to baseline. The plant systems adapted, and the Varellan Council approved continued collaboration. Threx filed one final note. Humans maintain function under physical stress, environmental mismatch, and immunological error. They persist not by avoiding harm, but by absorbing and adapting to it. Their strength is not absence of weakness, but presence of recovery. Colin, reading the footnote later, chuckled. That's going on my next resume.